Hello, my name's Sue Tappenden and I'm a coach, and I've wanted to just put a really quick video together for everyone just to give some help and tips and techniques to survive the difficulties that a lot of people are experiencing currently, having to be all squashed in to their homes with people that they wouldn't normally spend so much time with. So going to be just about, 10-15 minutes, going really quickly. You can always contact me if you've got any particular issues that you want a bit of reflection, a bit of help with. So I've called it Surviving Your Space Invaders. I think a lot of people feel that their space is currently quite invaded. Or prison life for beginners, because a lot of people feel that way. 24/7 group dynamics and how to survive them. I think I'm not going to go into the technicalities of group dynamics, but that is for a lot of households currently what's going on, what's coming into play, and it can be really tricky. And negotiation skills for families and cohabitees. I think there is a lot of negotiation that needs to take place. So the plan is really help you work out how the freaking heck you're all going to kind of survive in the same house for weeks and weeks. We don't know how long the current situation is going to go on, and it's a bit open-ended, and it will be easier and more difficult at different times, I'm quite sure. But the aim is that people don't murder each other, and I think if I can stop one homicide with some help and thoughts, then that would be good. I'm not planning to even begin to sort every single problem that everyone's going to have, but at least if I can just help a bit, that will be good. So the thing about people living currently and working as they are is that any wobbly bits in any relationship is going to be magnified. It's a kind of cauldron, a hotbed of pressure and stress. And so we need to be kind of ahead of the curve a bit with that. But also, usually effective relationships are going to be strained. People who get on well normally may well do that because they do get an amount of time apart from each other. And so suddenly when that's all different and changed, all sorts of things can begin to happen. There's a massive opportunity here for resentment to rear its head in relationships. And once that happens, it kind of bubbles and accelerates and becomes bigger and bigger and more distressing and debilitating. And it can really blow relationships apart and cause a huge amount of difficulty and arguments. And so what I'm suggesting here is that everyone takes a really proactive approach before the shit kind of hits the fan. So as I said, to get ahead of the curve with some of these potential problems and try and head them off before they happen. I think the context for life at the moment is different for everyone, and it will change. So what feels okay for some things will not feel okay in other parts of your life. So, there's opportunities to spend more time at home, perhaps with loved ones, with family, with the kids, to do stuff around the house. But actually, at times, it's going to be absolute bloody chaos. And I think there's a lot of posts where people are really struggling with kind of finding a level and finding a way of leaning into the current situation. Sometimes it will feel quite relaxing, potentially. Some of you might think never. But, for those people who perhaps is just adults in the house, they don't have to get up at the same time, they're not commuting, there will be elements of that, and that's okay. But at other times it will be, or for other families, other people, it will be incredibly stressful. I think there's a lot of scary stuff about currently, fear about our own health, health of loved ones. Perhaps, people are already ill and the anxiety around that, or the financial issues, or the stress caused by having normally a really tidy, well-structured house where everybody knows what they're doing when they're doing it, and suddenly that's all just completely up in the air. That's really hard and really stressful for people. But there's so much more going on. It is fun for some people, and people can find the fun and enjoyment in it. But actually, there's also difficult stuff going on for people. The potential of loss of jobs, potential of loss of life in some families, and actually, I'm going to say it's kind of not just a straightforward death, which sounds really awful. But actually, not being able to see loved ones in hospital, not being able to see loved ones or even have a kind of normal funeral at the moment, it can be really, really tough, and we need to acknowledge that for people that are around us. So the first thing I would recommend is to seek to understand, and I think that's about having a really focused, kind of very obvious conversation about how everyone is as soon as possible. I would suggest that you include everyone in your household, certainly the older children and the adults, if you have kids around. But even if you don't include smaller ones, little ones, or very older ones, I think they all need to be spoken to about how they are and what they need at the minute. I think the important thing is that you're not making any assumptions about how other people feel, what you think other people want or need. So it's for everyone to kind of say what they want to get out of the current situation, what they need to get out of it, how they feel. For them, some people, what might be non-negotiable. So, for some individuals where they almost have, or maybe they do actually have kind of diagnosed OCD, this kind of thing is going to be really difficult, and they may have some non-negotiables about cleanliness, about tidiness, about a whole load of flatmates who suddenly all find themselves living and using the kitchen, for example, or the bathroom all at the same time, whereas before that's quite staggered. What are the non-negotiables for everybody around that? What is there to be done in the house? And I kind of put this in here because I think there can easily be a lack of understanding around if you're out of the house in the office Monday to Friday, from 6, 7 in the morning until late in the evening, you may not fully understand what goes on, which is not meant to be insulting, it's kind of reality, but what goes on around the kids all day, every day, what needs to happen around the pets and the walking, even if you do know, it's like, how is all this stuff going to get shared out and managed effectively within the guidelines that we're having to work in? What needs to be done around the house, and how is that going to be done? So the washing, the cooking, the cleaning. What's going to happen about food, about buying food or putting online deliveries away, about cooking, about the management of food. That it is, or it has been, scarce. So how is that all being managed? What needs to happen about work? If you're used to working at home, likelihood is you're used to working at home when no one else is around. You suddenly put a load of kids into the mix and it becomes increasingly difficult. Where do you need to work? How many computers have you got? How is that going to be shared out if the kids need to be doing schooling as well? How much schooling are you going to do? Who needs to be doing online meetings? When are they? What oldies are there? So have you got older relatives who need to be supported and looked after, even if it's remotely, making calls to them, vulnerable people in your family? Like, what are the needs? Like, what is the totality of the stuff that needs to be kind of recognised, responsibilities kind of shared out? Because as soon as you understand, it's the same as being at work. If you understand the depth and the breadth of a project, for example, you can then start to work your way through it. And I think this is a little bit like that. There's the practicalities as well as the feelings, as well as the emotions, as well as the relationship stuff that all needs to be factored in through conversation. So my advice would be that you kind of literally develop a plan, factor in the seek to understand bits. How are you going to plan out everybody working and doing their schoolwork in a really practical way? There is, the stuff around taking into account the non-negotiables for people. So how are you going to manage tidying up? Are you just going to let the kids' rooms be messy because actually that's fine? Are you going to really manage minimum schooling with them? Not everybody wants to be homeschooling their kids. Some people are happy for them to pick up the bits that the kids are interested in and want to do. You have to go with what feels right for you without adding to what is already quite a stressful and difficult situation. I think #be kind, don't forget all the stuff about being kind, be flexible. You don't have to stick with the same rigid standards, the same high expectations of your kids. Somehow, somewhere, you're going to have to let things go, because if you don't be flexible, if you don't compromise, if you don't adjust your standards, it's just going to become increasingly difficult and stressful, and really become a place which doesn't feel easy to live in. And I don't think any of you want that. If you think the stress and distress has been caused by everybody else, the likelihood is you actually need to look at yourself and say, am I not compromising? Am I not being flexible? Am I not being kind? Are my expectations too high here? It's an unknown territory that we're in. So in terms of the plan, like who's going to do what? How is it going to be done? So, what are the expectations about the kids helping out more around the house? Who's going to be cooking the kids' lunch every day? Is it easier to divide up? One parent, if there are two parents in the house, will be responsible for the kids on whole days. So they work as much as they can, but actually responsibility for keeping the kids entertained, safe, fed falls to one of the parents a couple of days a week, and then it swaps over, because it means that the unresponsible parent can actually get on with a lot more work, whatever's needed. For single parents, that's entirely different and very difficult. But maybe you have older kids around you can share with. And my suggestion would be that you actually do deals with your kids. Maybe actually, if you do this, you can do the other. Paying them to clean if you have older children. Doing deals around space, who can use the computer. Because actually, unless you really start to find those compromises, find those deals, I'm a great one with paying kids, but obviously that's a very personal thing. Literally write down the plan. Be very specific. So actually, who's responsible for taking out the rubbish? Who's going to be feeding the kids on what days? Decide that you're going to have everyone's working, whether it's schoolwork or work between these hours, and then in the afternoon we're going to have fun. Or if it is a kitchen use plan in a shared flat, who's doing what when? Be really specific, be really clear. And I would suggest that you literally stick it on the wall for everyone to see. Stick reminders around the house about, please put the toilet seat down if there's more of you around all day and it drives one of you mental. Or, if there's a do not disturb sign on the door, then that literally means you cannot go in because there's a online meeting going on. And keep it under review for everybody, constantly reviewing what you're doing, how you're doing it, is it working, what's not working. It would be even better if, in some ways you need to treat this like a business plan or a project plan. And calm communication, I think this is about continuing to talk to each other, but calmly, understanding this is tricky for everybody. There's a really good tip, first truth first, which if you have to say something that might feel quite difficult, you can say your first truth first. So example would be, I feel really anxious asking you to do this, but when you don't, I feel like this. Or I'm really worried that you're going to get angry if when I say this to you, please try not to, whatever. What it does is, by saying what you're worried about or what you're feeling, it kind of sets the tone of the conversation. It gives the other person a bit of a heads up, and it can be really effective at kind of taking the heat out of a situation. So finally, do speak up about what you need, what you want, and how you feel, and encourage everyone else in your household to do the same. If you don't do it, you're just going to carry on with the tension and the kind of unsettled and the unhappy that you may be currently experiencing. You need to be more understanding than ever before, and that really does come from compromise, from flexibility, from just being kind to other people. Keep reviewing everything together and make changes as and when you need to. It's not a kind of fixed position, and the position around our own behaviour and the government kind of expectations of us is changing constantly. Things will happen, maybe people get sick or you get more worried about somebody. Stuff happens, shit happens, and we need to keep reviewing and changing and being flexible, and just keep talking to each other. This is tough stuff. And relationships are everything at the end of the day. They're what make us happy, they're what make us incredibly unhappy. And it's how can we find ways of doing this stuff as well as possible. So I put my contact details there. So, if there is anything that I can help with, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. send me a message, send me a text, email me. I'm very happy to help out where I can. So I wish you all well, and I hope you found this helpful.